After the failure of this first English expedition, the Rochellais hold fast. They're sure the English will try again to resupply them. Richelieu then searches for a way to block the port. He comes up with an extraordinary project: to build a dyke. It's not a new idea. 5 years earlier, the master of the French engineers tried it.
Pompeo Targone's project was a series of boats chained to each other, a floating dyke, for he well knew that he'd never be able to drive foundation piles into the seabed. But his floating dyke was soon destroyed by storms.
Richelieu, though, has another idea. It's something that he had in his head. He has to construct something quite different.
And Richelieu is a persistent man. It's November the 30th, 1627, 3 weeks after the English withdrew from the island of Ré. The cardinal summons the king's architect, Clément Métézeau. His maps depict the impossible. Métézeau is proposing a dyke made of stone. It'll be 1,500 meters long and 6 meters high. It will completely block the entrance to the channel leading to the port of La Rochelle. The project looks unachievable. Richelieu, however, seizes on it. But how do you build a dyke out in the open sea? First, you have to lay the foundations. The bed of the Bay of La Rochelle, though, is made of mud.
Clément Métézeau immediately came up with a project based on driven piles that would stabilize the dyke on the shifting seabed. Once these piles were stabilized, they'd simply sink boats filled with stones to stabilize the rear of the piles. It was like a rock, an initial stable base on which to build a platform.
Richelieu chooses the radical option of scuppering fishing and trading vessels, then stacking them on top of each other.
Richelieu will scour all the ports of France, the older boats that he'll buy, and transport to La Rochelle.
He found ships, filled their hulls with stones, and sank them in line, a total of 59 of them in a line from one side of the bay to the other, between the famous Point of Corée and the tip of the Chef de Bay. And he left a gap in the middle, because the sea had to get through or the dyke would be toppled in the very first storm.
To prevent any ships from trying to break through the dyke, he plans to place tree trunks like giant spears. They're known as the candlesticks.
The candlesticks stopped any ships entering at high tide. They were large diagonal beams planted at 45 degrees on sunken boats. At low tide, they protruded. But at high tide, their metal tips barely broke the surface, ready to impale any boat that came near.
The works are of epic proportions. More than 4,000 men are mobilized. The workers have to endure the cold, the rain, and the mud.
It's a colossal construction site. It's easier in spring, but come winter, as well as summer, there are huge storms, high tides, and you can't use cement. You have to pile up the stones, and then they're pushed around by the waves. It's huge.
For the cardinal, it's all now a personal matter. The dyke could well be his gift to posterity.
The dyke was very costly for the cardinal personally. Every other day, the work was costing him £4,000 out of his own pocket. The work went on for 3 or 4 months. And every other day, the cardinal was paying all this money out of his own pocket.
Richelieu's playing for high stakes. If he fails, the English will be able to return by sea to rescue the Rochellais. By March 1628, work's advancing well. But Louis XIII's getting impatient. He fears another English attack. He wants to bring down La Rochelle before Charles I can send reinforcements. But how can he pierce the fortifications of this impregnable city? Thanks to his spies within the ramparts, the cardinal's getting intelligence. Particularly about the few entry points, the famous gates of La Rochelle. And there's a flaw in La Rochelle's armor, the Maubec Gate. They say a couple of firecrackers would be enough to breach it.
It's the only gate that has no fortification. All the other gates of La Rochelle have outside defenses too. But this one is just a door that gives onto the swamp with just a portcullis. The marshes provide natural defense, so there's no fortification there at all.
But it's a rather more complicated business than it at first appears.
The gate had an accumulation of quite substantial obstacles. There was a bridge with a moat, filled by the water of the Maubec. Then there was a drawbridge.
Then you have to get through the first airlock, defended by a portcullis. Then there's a long, angled corridor, with 40 soldiers in it waiting to ambush you. Along with his spies in the fortress, Richelieu meticulously prepares his plan of attack. But one of them is killed, and Richelieu fears he's been discovered. There isn't a minute to lose. They have to attack. Richelieu sends to Paris for explosives experts to blow up the gate. The attack is planned for the night of the 12th of March, 1628. It will be the first attack by the king's forces since the siege began 7 months ago. Armed with explosives, pincers and axes, they set off for the Maubec Gate in simple small boats. Once they've blasted their way into the fortress, they'll be able to open a passage to the cardinal's troops from within. So Richelieu takes up position to the north, outside the Cugnes Gate, along with 1,000 horses and 4,000 footmen. The explosives men board at nightfall to avoid being seen. But even before they reach the fortifications of La Rochelle, they lose their way. They don't even get past the city's natural ramparts. The explosives never reach their destination.
They have to cross marshes that you need to know your way through. There's no moon. Men get lost out there and just don't arrive in time.
Morning comes, and Richelieu pulls his men back, enraged that his plan has failed, because the siege would have ended then and there. If he'd only taken that gate, he'd have got all his men into the fort and La Rochelle would have been taken.
The cardinal gives up on a frontal offensive. The fortifications of La Rochelle are indeed impregnable. From now on, all Richelieu can count on is his dyke. But after months of construction, it's still not complete, and the English ships are getting dangerously close to La Rochelle. A week after the failed attack on the Maubec Gate, the Rochellais are looking to the horizon with relief. The English fleet is in view. The English have chosen the right moment to attack. They arrive just after a big storm, when the construction site of the dyke is shut down.
3 small boats of England arrived, and they had very, very important letters with them, written by the English to the people of La Rochelle. And they tried to enter to La Rochelle. You have to imagine the dam was not completely finished, the dyke of Richelieu. But you had already a lot of soldiers there. And so 2 boats could not pass. One could pass a little bit, but then was sunk. And they had the whole ladder step. This means simply that Richelieu and Louis XIII had the whole attack plan from the English in their hands.
These plans are a godsend for Richelieu. And that's how, 2 months later, on a new resupplying mission, the British fleet falls into a trap. The French warships are all there waiting for them, in battle order. Seeing that it was expected, the English fleet is terrified. It turns and leaves without a fight.